It is 7 o'clock. I'd like to open Tuesday, April 21st, 2020 Board of Selectmen meeting. And we will have reports from the LEPC, which stands for the Local Emergency Planning Committee. And the FinCom will be joining us in about 15-20 minutes. We're going to discuss financial considerations for the town, as you know, for fallout from the coronavirus. And I'd like to see if we could collect some ideas for the LEPC is looking for ideas from the selectmen for our top considerations and concerns for the near, mid, and longer term of the recovery. Okay, Chief Fisher is here, and I usually put him on first. So I'd like to kick off with the Chief, please, for LEPC. Chief, you're muted.
Kate, you gonna take any public input first?
Oh, I can. Usually we do the reports, and then I can ask people for input.
Okay.
If people who want to ask questions, if you have the chat function operable, if you could use that, please. If not, I will ask for questions at the end of this for public input. Okay.
All right, thanks. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
So for those that are not on LEPC, the LEPC is a meeting 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And I think that the town's in pretty good stead. If I had to talk about a 10,000-foot view, unfortunately, we still have a few people suffering from COVID-19, but more in recovery. And also, I think the committee members are committed to ensuring that the infrastructure is there in Carlisle to keep people healthy, both our residents first and foremost, and then our employees. So tomorrow morning, we're scheduled each division of LEPC.
Oh, you just cut out. Chief, you just cut out. Well, I'll see if I can chat him.
Hey,
John, we're not hearing you.
John?
I can't hear you.
Oh, come on.
Poor guy.
I know, he's talking.
There you go. You're back.
We lost 3/4 of that, I'm afraid, Chief.
Well, I'm afraid that I hope so Brian shakes his head, and he has that look that we sometimes have during our other meetings. Like, yeah, my laptop for some reason goes into mute. Either that or Brian's controlling it. And it says the bald guy's talking too much. I'm going to mute him. Let's see how long it takes him to figure it out.
Probably.
So I don't know how much of that you got, but I feel like we're in a good spot. And I'm looking forward to members of the LEPC reporting tomorrow morning about what their short, medium, and long-term considerations are for Carlisle going forward. So I want those watching at home to have confidence in the fact that we are keeping up a planning mentality and looking at the considerations that we have to in our town to ensure that we keep our residents safe. Our policies and procedures that we have, we're constantly working on adapting them and ensuring that we're doing what we can to provide services while balancing that with safety. Police department itself is in a good spot. We have a bunch of things we're doing in both the short and medium term to ensure the safety of people who come to the police department to receive services. But I thank you for this time, Kate, and look forward to any questions anyone has of either the committee or the police department. Thanks, Kate.
Great. Chief Saros, would you like to?
Yeah, so Chief Fisher and I have an enviable part of our job is that our people do go out and do wonderful things, and we get the nice letters, and I even got a plate of brownies this week. But one of the other things we've been doing is collecting the masks and face shields and all that and distributing them. So all the people in Carlisle have been doing all this work, and I get all the thanks when I go distribute them, which I think is a nice breakdown of work. But people, it's been great that Carlisle has stepped up and done that, and the places we've been delivering them, the face shields going to Emerson and the masks and all going mainly to long-term health care facilities. They've been very appreciative. In terms of internally, we're doing a lot of planning. This is been a kind of an exciting time, a lot of positive things in the fire department for this last 6 months or a year. And we have a lot of new people doing a lot of training. We're trying not to lose momentum. So we're trying to figure out how to keep that going, even with the new normal, the new reality. In terms of externally, we have been successful. I mean, as a region, with not overrunning our healthcare capabilities. So we're ready. We're pretty well ready for what comes to us. But also, even Emerson has not. They have plenty of cases, as does Leahy, but they're not overrun. So that is a good thing. So, yay us. We've kept it so that if you need care, there is care to be had. We have not overrun the resources that we have locally.
Excellent. Thank you. I saw Angela, right? There's Angela. I don't know who's that. Did you mute yourself? There we go. Angela?
Okay, hi. So the Council on Aging is reaching out to the seniors. We've been in touch with the people making masks, and they're going to be delivering quite a few to you, Brian. And we'll get those first to the 2 housing complexes and then make them known to anybody else that needs them. We've written a grant to bring a meal to the people that are of the lowest income that we are aware of the seniors, and we're going to be delivering to a large number of them at the end of next week. So we're calling all those people to see which choices they want. We're moving as many of our programs online as we can. We're working with the library closely to have them come up with some programs that we can do together, some games online, and we are starting a second online coffee chat. And the first one has turned out to be quite well received. And we're doing all of our exercise classes online. And our new director starts on May 11th. Her name is Joan Ingersoll.
Excellent. And who says you can't teach an old dog new tricks? That's what I say. So let me see. Oh, Linda Fantasia, there you are. Board of Health. Oh, sorry. Lori, I'll come back. I'll circle back to you. I'm sorry, I didn't see you. Linda, you are muted.
Off now.
There you go. Now you go. Okay.
Hi, everyone. So our case count of confirmed cases has unfortunately increased this week, but only by 1. So we are now at 6 confirmed COVID cases, 4 of whom have totally recovered, and 2 are still active. And our contacts have also increased, which you would expect. If there's a positive case in a household, then the family becomes contacts. So we, a total of 8 contacts, 5 have been cleared. They've gone through their quarantine, and 3 are still in quarantine. We did have some comments about, on the website, about people not quite understanding what our numbers meant or whether they were current or cumulative. So we are working on that so that people will know exactly where Carlisle stands. And also on the website, you will find that the state is now listing cases by cities and towns. So you can go right to Carlisle and see what the cumulative cases are for Carlisle. And we're all doing the same. We're dating it back to January 1st. That does not mean we think COVID was around in January 1st. It's just our way of tracking it to match how the state does. And so that's pretty much it. We're hoping the numbers just kind of stay where they are, which would be good.
Indeed. Thank you. Okay, Lori Eckler. And you are muted, so let's see. There she goes. Okay.
Okay. So we are up to probably 14 seniors that we're helping with groceries, pharmacy runs, some trash pickups. We have not done any dog walking yet. And we are opening it up to healthcare workers or anyone that works in a medical facility. So doctors, nurses, people that clean at a healthcare facility. So Amy Smack and I have been working on a poster for that to put out there today to see if we can help those people as well. And then we have a couple other Carlisle families that we're helping with groceries. And that's sort of the status update.
Thank you very much. Christine, I don't see Jim, but I haven't checked the whole list.
No, I don't think he's here.
Okay, Christine first.
Yeah, he's not here. So there's not too much. Everything's rolling along. We're on break this week. I can't tell you how great it is to be in Florida because I'm not there. So
How long did you prepare that joke?
it just literally came off the top of my head, Linda. No, so things are quiet. Jim is still holding, like he had his coffee this morning, parent coffee, and he'll still do story time tomorrow at 8:30. So just a couple things going on, but we did hear today at noontime that the governor has shut down schools in Massachusetts through the end of this academic year. So now that we sort of have our marching orders, I'm sure that we'll get started on how to keep this show on the road. We don't have a meeting on Friday because it is April break, so we will probably pick this up a week from Friday at our regular school committee meeting on Friday mornings at 8:30.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Kate.
Barney, who does, oh, okay, so for those of you who would like, in the public, who would like to give some public input, if you go to your bottom bar where it says participants and click on that, you will see a little window that opens up, and at the bottom of that window, it says there are 3 buttons which say invite, mute me, and raise hand. So if you would like to give some public input, if you would please raise your hand so that we see you and can call on you. And unmute you, of course. Tim, do you see anybody?
Maybe I don't see anyone, Kate.
Okay. Is there anybody else from LEPC who wanted to add anything? Or anybody who wanted to ask anything of the LEPC? You'd raise your hand. All right.
Nathan had his hand up briefly, Kate.
Oh, I'm sorry, Nathan.
I was just making sure it was working.
Oh. It works.
Barney, should we talk about Friday?
Oh, do.
Okay. So Barney and I are part of an amazing group called the Carlisle Cheer Project, trying to cheer up the center of town. And on Friday, we will have the first of many, we hope, musical drive-throughs. So at Spalding Field, in front of FRS and in front of the library, we're going to have single family or single musicians performing at these 3 locations, and people will be routed by the police to drive by each of the performances with their window down to enjoy just a little bit of music, but mostly enjoying some camaraderie with their fellow townsmen. So that's from 6 to 7 on Friday. If the rain persists, then we'll do it from 6 to 7 on Saturday night. So spread the word, and we hope to see you there.
Sounds good. And hopefully there'll be some sort of a school parade.
A week later, yep.
A planning.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. I see, I'm going to give another opportunity to anybody from the audience who might want to raise their hand, ask any questions or give any input, make some comments. And seeing none, I would like to thank everybody from the LEPC yet again for all the time and effort that you put in planning. We are, as the chief has kind of alluded to, kind of going into our next phase. We seem to be coming up to the crest of our whatever infection rate we're going to have, but we're starting to plan forward to the other side for the near, the mid, and the long term. So of course I invite you to stay for this, the next conversation with the FinCom, and then after that, the Board of Selectmen will be trying to create a list of what we think we should be working on for those 3 periods of time. I see somebody. Oh, okay. Thank you, Christine. Okay, great. Well, I got this flashing. That doesn't do it on my other computer, so that really caught my eye. Great. So thank you, and I'd like to invite the FinCom to unmute themselves if they're not already unmuted, and we can embark on. And you need to open your meeting so that we can.
7:16, and I will call to order the Carlisle FinCom committee to have a joint discussion with the Board of Selectmen around FY21 budget implications of COVID to the finances of the town.
Great, thanks.
All right. So I think we were here perhaps, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, and one of the things that we highlighted, which has been kind of the center of the way we've approached our discussions the last couple of weeks from a FinCom perspective, is that the impact of COVID is uncertain. In fact, as we've discussed it, I think we've highlighted that we expect and assume that it'll actually have a multi-year impact beyond just the FY21. So as a result, there's an aspect of potential unexpected costs, but even more than that, loss of revenue from a tax collection potentially as the economy is impacted, as well as state aid. And I think we all kind of read news articles about the economic impact and obviously the revenues that the state would bring in, ultimately impacting the aid that we would get from the state from a Carlisle perspective. And the way that we've been really addressing the uncertainty is really by having discussions around how we might increase reserves in order to address anything that's unexpected, whether it's loss of revenue or unexpected costs, as well as managing spend. And I think those are the 2 major areas that we've had discussions on. And we met last night. Certainly can highlight a few of the topics that we discussed, and there's certainly some areas that having a joint discussion with the Board of Selectmen would be helpful to get certain input in terms of approach or things that we're kind of working through. So I'll just pause here and allow any of the other FinCon committee members to chime in anything in addition that they would like to comment on before we kind of start. And with nothing, we can continue forward. Is there a way that I can just share a screen with the group?
Tim can certainly, he's the moderating this, and he can give you those permissions, I believe.
I should be able to. I was told to turn off screen sharing a few meetings ago, and I did. Now I have to remember how to turn it back on.
Okay.
Well, that's fine. I can actually just talk through it. It wasn't very complicated in terms of what I put up.
Thank you.
We don't need to fuss with technology at the last minute. So we look at it, our discussions have been revolved around a couple of things. First is really around FY20, potential savings. And the other area that we would looking at is essentially where we can look to manage expenses in FY21, expenditures from a budget perspective. And yesterday we had our conversation as FinCom we had actually a very important component to the discussion around potential savings, which is really around the schools, the Carlisle Public School, as well as obviously the joint high school that we have with Concord. And certainly that's an area of potential savings. The Carlisle Public School had provided an estimate of what that savings might be. Concord Carlisle High School, they've also done their work and have an estimate. I think the amount that may end up being potential savings in the end for Carlisle is somewhat dependent in terms of how they are actually bolstering their reserves. And ultimately, obviously, what's remaining would actually come back as a prorate between Concord and Carlisle, the way that we normally contribute that percentage. I think the other places that we had discussed was really a hold on discretionary spend, revolving funds was another area, and current articles with unspent dollars. So from the Carlisle Public School, and I think we still have some of the, I'm just taking a look, but we have still some of the, I don't see any of them on anymore, but in any case, I think it was in the order of around $500,000. Or one of the things that was highlighted in there, obviously, is certain aspects of going into FY21 with a measure of risk that is not necessarily baked into that, and uncertainty, as well as the fact that the closure of the schools, or actually this distance ed, potentially has impacted actually somewhere the progress of some of the students. So in our discussion with them, I think one of the things they highlight is potentially having a program which would have a cost to it, to actually have summer school for students. That would be in addition to the normal summer school that they would have in place. This would be more general population. So in that, I think there was kind of a net thought that, between the two, there's probably somewhere around $300,000 that would kind of come out of that. And where our discussion went was, certainly, I think they also wanted to bake in some reserves for, that they would typically bake into. But I think in our conversation, and I think we landed in a aligned position where it makes more sense if we were to kind of hold that from a town perspective. And as things came up, we should certainly have that discussion and begin to kind of shape, essentially, covering off on the risks that may have arisen over the year. And so I think that was the nature of the conversation. Concord Carlisle High School, like I said, they've done some of their work, but it's still to be determined. I plan to reach out to the Concord FinCom and have a conversation with them in terms of where they're at and what they're thinking about. From a standpoint of hold and discretionary spend, Kim can certainly chime into this. I think there was an estimate of about $300,000. I think that was using last year in terms of a turn back to the town of about 1%. Holding on discretionary spend, we probably expect to maybe go a little bit north of the 1% this year. And there was also another thought around revolving funds. That I think there was an opportunity there potentially of another $300,000 from that perspective. The last thing around current articles, that was still something that we needed to dig into. The liaisons, as well as Priscilla, we're going to kind of go through and take a look at the unspent dollars and whether they're truly unspent, and whether that there's an opportunity there from a potential savings perspective. So that's really kind of the areas that we've identified, and certainly from the standpoint of Board of Selectmen, areas that we haven't kind of considered, certainly chime in around that. So one of the key things that we'll want to talk about tonight, and we'll probably continue our conversation in the next few weeks, month or so, is really the options for FY20 savings. Certainly there's an aspect of free cash, reserve fund stabilization, and a potential maybe a reduction of the FY21 tax rate. We think it's going to be a combination of one or at least a couple of these options, but this is something that we still have to discuss, and certainly would be welcome the input of the Board of Selectmen in terms of your viewpoints in that. So I'll pause here. I drafted up these notes really quick between our meeting last night and tonight's meeting. So if there's anything from last night's meeting that FinCom would also like to highlight around FY20 potential savings, certainly chime in. You can certainly chime in now in terms that those areas might be.
Unknown caller.
Okay. Boy, doesn't
So,
look.
yeah, it
Been
doesn't look like there's anything I
complicated.
missed. So I did a pretty good job, I guess.
Yeah.
So now I think we can open up for discussion on this point between the Board of Selectmen and FinCom in terms of any questions or thoughts in terms of shared ideas or feedback in terms of our approach and some of the questions around how we might utilize the savings at the end. These are all kind of projected numbers at this point. Obviously, we have to kind of track that through, to the end of the year.
So, Board of Selectmen.
Well, I think the idea of trying to figure out which funds to put the unspent money into is very important because some need town meeting approval to then spend from and others do not. And balancing transparency with security and the ability to respond when unknown expenditures come up is very, very important. I know you folks have thought a lot about that, and I just want to emphasize so that everybody understands that there are a number of places you could put that money, and we have to be careful where it is so we have reasonable flexibility while maintaining transparency.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Well, one other point is we'll also have likely 2 town meetings, one in September, October, and then presumably in April. 2 opportunities where we'll be able to put some of those funds to a vote. So that's part of the calculus in terms of timing. We will have opportunities to have 2 town meetings beyond the June 23rd one for fiscal 21.
Mm-hmm.
Barney, you're muted. I see your lips moving, but can't hear you.
All right, how's that?
Good,
Sounds
much
good.
better.
Yeah. So question for the FinCom, do you all have a target goal that you're trying to reach in terms of savings?
That actually hasn't been something that we've specifically identified. I think we've talked more about, at least those 2 meetings ago, in terms of a target goal for FY21 in terms of what we would like to see in terms of savings. I think we were looking at $1 million to $1.5 million.
Right, I remember
If you
that.
actually look at FY20 savings, which are going to kind of go into more of the reserve, kind of padding opportunity situation, so to speak. When you added up all those numbers, they came close to, potentially, about $1 million if they all kind of played out exactly the way it's kind of projected as it is right now. So, so from that, I think, we didn't really specify for FY20 in terms of any targets because, in a certain sense, there's a bit of kind of control that we don't have in that, right? So we've already spent a good chunk of the budget. There's only this remaining piece, and some of it is material to be able to run the town to the end of the year, right? So I think this is kind of more of like a bookend type of number that we're kind of estimating right now from the savings perspective in FY20.
And I'm not sure I understood the net result in terms of savings from the Carlisle Public School. Were you suggesting that it could be in the range of $300,000?
Yeah, it could be. I think they had kind of done some type of projection in the order of about 500. And FinCom can check me because I on this other number, because my number is different from yours, Jim, in terms of the summer school. I had written down $130,000. They were thinking if they were to have a need to do a summer school.
That's what I wrote down too.
That was the number they quoted last night.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the net of that, there were some other additional expenditures they anticipated next year, which brought down.
Yes.
Brought it up to 230,000.
There were 2 items of $50K each.
Right. So, and let me just enter in here, especially on Barney's question. The schools, I think, came forward very, helpfully with this $500,000 that might not be spent this fiscal year. But as we all know, this fiscal year ends. and everything kind of starts over. And now the school is saying, well, you know, we also need to increase our budget request for fiscal 21. Now, putting aside the merits of that, I think we all need to think hard about whether that's, you know, we can't do that as a town as a whole. We just can't do it in fiscal 20. We can't raise higher the number we already are working with. So we have to find solutions that don't require increasing a fiscal 21 budget that I think as a committee, as Victor just said, we already think is higher than we can afford.
Right, right. And I think that part goes on the other side of the equation, which we'll talk about, which is, you know, our thoughts around FY21 budget, you know, in terms of looking for reductions, not across the board, but looking to go through an exercise to identify where those reductions may be made.
I would totally agree with that. I think, you know, I think it's really hard for us to look at the budget right now and, you know, next year's budget and how we would increase that, because it is already very, very high. You know, one of the things that you asked was, you know, thinking about where we might spend this savings. You know, for me, it's not a savings if we're spending it. And so it seems to me like what we should do is make sure that if there are funds that we're not expending and they hadn't been allocated to a particular project, we might consider allocating them to any unexpected expenditures because of COVID-19, and then use it in future years to try to, you know, bring the budget down, or,
Yes.
you know.
Yes.
And
So sorry,
not find new things to spend now other than COVID-19. I think, you know, COVID-19 is going to cost us money, and we're going to need to be prepared to cover that.
Yep. Yep. So sorry if I misspoke. It wasn't about spending the money. It was about how we would utilize it. And utilize it, I gave the number of options that we would potentially do it, like leverage it through free cash, a reserve fund, stabilization, reduction of FY21 tax rate. Those are the options. Not so much looking for projects to spend it on, but those are all kind of shore up, you know, so to shore up the finance types of opportunities and levers.
Right. And if you think about the impact of COVID-19, it would seem, you know, prudent for us to think about covering the costs of COVID-19 and then reducing taxes, because it's going to take us a while to get out of this, and we're going to really have to be worrying about taxes for, I think, a little while. That could be wrong, but it seems to me like it might take a little while for the economy to recover.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's not just the other thing we have to balance is there's some short-term things we can do to help fiscal 21 that might put us behind the 8 ball in fiscal 22. So part of the balance is you don't want to overcompensate in fiscal 21 and then put yourself in a corner for fiscal 22. So there's a little bit of a balancing act. And I think as Kim was explaining last night, it doesn't look like we'd even be in a position to update the tax rates until likely Q3 of next year. So no matter what we do, people will probably be taxed at the same rate through the first 3 quarters of the next fiscal year anyway.
Right.
So there's a lot of things in play here.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just as an example, just to clarify the short-term things, you know, let's just pretend we were extreme and said, well, we're not going to fund any municipal facilities as an extreme. Well, that's going to catch up with you, right? You know, in the outer years. So, you know, that whole aspect of balancing, you know, these shorter term decisions is definitely a consideration.
Mm-hmm.
Luke, did you have any questions or comments? I don't see
No,
any.
not really. I mean, you know, the only thing is like the maintenance, right? You have to continue to do the maintenance, right? I mean, that's one of the concerns.
That's right.
Yeah, I think the low hanging fruit is the stuff that isn't getting utilized now, right? So, I mean, obviously nobody's in town hall. You don't really have to heat it. You know, school, same sort of thing. There must be, you know, budget items that are easy picks from there.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, and obviously you guys have thought of that, and that, you know, and I think that's the easiest way to go. But you know, just to kind of echo what Nathan said, and what you guys have been saying is that, you know, I think, you know, the bulk of that money needs to be shifted to, you know, the COVID-19 piece. And then ultimately, yeah, any other savings, I think we bank it, you know, and then see where we fall out, because, yeah, we don't know what the economic impacts are going to be, right? And it may be that, unemployment's going to rise. I mean, I think that's, especially now with, school out through the end of the year, I think, people's jobs are going to be impacted. Companies are going to have to lay off, in order to meet their bottom line and not shut down. So, I definitely think, the consideration for the tax rate down the road, it may not be 2021, right? It may be something that we see in 2022, just to give
Right.
people a bit of a break. But that's just it. I think we really just have to be cautious and, kind of squirrel the money as best we can. But obviously the resources that need it, that's where it's got to go. But there should still be a surplus, I would hope.
Mhm.
But yeah, so I'm in agreement with everybody.
And wait, just to remind you, Victor said at the beginning that our most at-risk revenue next year is from the state, wherever the state would give revenue. And that'll be 21, that'll be 22. But also to remind us of what we talked about a couple of weeks ago, if we look at the 07, 08 financial crisis as an example, obviously different, but an example, it did not impact property tax revenue until 2012.
Mhm.
If you think about that, that was 3 or 4 years down the road. Now, we're not going to plan for, 4 years from now at this point, but, I think what it also says to me, probably there won't be much impact on property tax for a couple of years. We'll be dealing with the state. And if we're dealing with the state, it also means that uncertainty will ride into the new fiscal year. The state isn't going to have a budget probably July 1 for fiscal 21, and then they may come back, in mid-August and say, oh, by the way, you're getting X% less. So we really do need, as you said, look, we need to have something, quote, in the bank. And then what Victor's talking about is, which bank to put it in and how do we get it out again?
Yep. And certainly we'll have further discussions. And I think the last time we met, I think we thought it would be good, maybe touch base every couple of weeks. So as we have those discussions and have further thoughts, we can run more specifics for additional feedback around how we feel that we should kind of be allocating any savings that we have this year into kind of reserve types of funds.
It's just you probably got this heads up, but when the Board of Selectmen last met, we talked about the state, what is it, FMLA, the new law about like
Family medical leave.
Leave.
yeah. And
Yes.
so we're not going to go into the details about that now, but I just wanted to point out that if there is savings, one of the things that we did specifically ask Chief Fisher and Soros and DPW, Gary, was just to look at what might they need in order to ensure that they can still continue to provide those critical services during this time. So if they start, if more police and fire and DPW start getting sick, what are we going to do in order to be able to respond to that quickly? And our assumption is that will cost money, and so we'll have to talk about that. So that's something that's kind of out there that I'm pretty sure that everybody's working on what that plan would be and what that might cost. But that's something, just in case you hadn't heard it, that was our discussion in our last meeting of, please deliver a plan to us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep, makes sense. So is there anything else? Oh, Barney's about to go.
Yeah, so, and again, 2 weeks ago when we talked with you all, you were thinking about possibly asking departments to come up with, a percentage reduction. And so where are you in your thinking about that?
So that'll be my next set of points. If anybody has about FY21. So if everybody's good with moving on, that's kind of FY20 in terms of some of the conversation points we've had. So from an FY21 perspective, a couple of things that we talked about, I think I'll cover off on the one that Barney highlighted first, which is really kind of going through a budget exercise. This budget exercise would essentially not go to the departments to say, a blanket 5% cut figure out where it is. What it's going to say is go through that exercise of what you would reduce if there was a 5% cut, and then we would sit down with them to understand what the implications and impact would be. And I think that's the current kind of thinking in terms of that. And then from there, we could make some forms of decisions. I mean, depending on what it looks like, some departments may get zero in terms of a reduction. I think one, and I don't know if Lena has joined, she's had a lengthy conversation with the Board of Health, and from the standpoint of discretionary funds that they have besides the payrolls, like 5%, pretty much cuts into almost a lot of what they have, as well as the fact that they're the ones who are probably going to have mandates from the state around COVID, right? And so using that as an example, if they were to come and say, if 5% would mean X, Y, Z, we would say, hey, this doesn't make sense when you look at across the board. I think the other thing that we're thinking about is maybe make it a little bit simpler is not the right word for it, but obviously reducing 5% off $1,000 is not worth the exercise of spending the time to try to do that. And so we're looking for more of the bigger bucket, budgets to kind of, to look at from that standpoint. I think the other comments that I would make around the exercise is potentially having all of the departments, when we meet with them, come together. We haven't finalized that as a direction, but it was an idea, so that they can all hear across the different departments what it would mean for reductions across the departments. And I think that kind of falls into the nature of the exercise. I think what we want to make sure that we have from the standpoint of all the departments is to recognize this is a challenging time, and we're all trying to work together in this. It's really setting the tone for the town from the standpoint of this is probably not the right time to be increasing budget. It's really a reduction that we're looking at.
Sorry, just out of curiosity. So, there are certain boards, Board of Health, CONSCOM, Planning Board, or no Planning Board, Building Department, that all have permitting. I know a Building Department goes into a different fund, right? But some of these go directly into the general fund. So that's revenue that's just not coming in at all. Do you have an idea what that's going to be? And and I'm not saying we need to cut budgets accordingly. It's I think Board of Health is going to be one that they're probably going to overrun their budget, and we use the surplus money to fund whatever they need to do. I mean, they're just as critical as police and fire and DPW now. So they and I think most of them are on this. I think they realize they can't go crazy, but you got to do what you got to do, right? So if you need to spend, you need to spend. And I do think that they're going to be one of the ones that run over. But in terms of just permitting, we are going to lose some revenue. Do we have a ballpark of what that may be? Is it, we're probably not talking much, but is it 20,000? Is it 10,000? I mean,
it's revenue slowed some, like with the building on other ones right now. The taxes is the main thing, and it's coming in. As each month goes by, I'll have a better projection, which I had done before, for revenues to budgets to actuals, and actually see, where we're at on that. So, as soon as I can pull more numbers together, but buildings down a little bit. I haven't looked at all the other ones. Taxes, I'll know right after May 1st is done. I'll, get all that together for that Monday, if we have a meeting, and be able to see where we're, because that's the crucial big part of the bulk of our money comes in the end of April, beginning of May. And basically, Priscilla and I get all the, receipts right up to date and see where we're at, going into May with 1 month left, 1.5 months left of actually where we're hitting, our revenues. But there will be some less, but basically a lot of Carlisle's is really, taxes and real estate and motor vehicle, and then motor vehicles going out. So the small amounts you might, park and recreation, obviously, but that's in their revolving fund. Building is down some from what I looked, but I'm not sure how much he normally gets in the last few years. I think his revenue right now is around close to 100,000, but it's usually closer to like 150. So I'm not sure how much more we'll get on that, but that is split 50-50 between revolving and general fund.
Oh, okay.
That's something that we're thinking of changing. So
Yeah.
you're going to see more of the revenue go down, I think, after July for the fiscal 21 than you will towards the end of this.
Right. Yeah. So right. So that's the thing too, is that we got to think about that into next year.
So when you're doing your local receipts for next year, you're gonna that's going to be a number that will probably go down. But then again, we're probably not going to be saying a tax rate till next spring. We're probably going to have a third quarter preliminary billing.
Right.
And not an actual tax bill that will go out for January 1.
Excellent. Great. Thanks, Kim.
Great. Thanks, Kim. Thanks, Kim. So I think around the details, these are still things that we're kind of nailing down. I think the thought right now, at least we discussed last night, is maybe get a memo providing some more clarity and direction. I know that Tim has already met with the departments and given them kind of the heads up in that. And then maybe giving them a week or two to kind of work through where they may take those reductions. And then we could certainly schedule time sometime, I'm guessing beginning of May sometime, to get some discussion going and really try to work towards having a kind of a final view from a budget standpoint closer to the end of May, which is what we need to have in place in order to feed a end of June town meeting. So I think that's from a rough type of approach standpoint, potentially having all the departments that are participating or we've asked to participate to come together in a single meeting. But none of this has been finalized. This is just thoughts that we had from last night's meeting. So the other area that we've looked at and had discussions around really postponing certain financial warrants. Certainly this buys a little bit of time to see what the implications are to be able to make decisions, and postponing them to the fall town meeting. So for example, you have, and this is not to say that all the long-term caps would fall into this. Maybe there's a subset. We haven't gone through and looked and kind of come up to a position on individual lines in the long-term caps. This is about $280,000 there. There was a conversation we actually had around OPEB as well, because we fund that typically at 425. Maybe that's a decision that we need to make kind of later not for June timeframe. So between those, if you kind of max those out, this is about $700,000 there. So I think we'll kind of go through those financial warrants and perhaps come up with some thoughts in terms of what we should potentially postpone, just to give us a bit of better sense of what the implications are. We can see how the economy is trending over a broader set of months and whatnot before pulling the trigger and making some decisions.
I think another place to look might be municipal facilities. Certainly want to keep doing the maintenance things, but if we're just putting it off until next fall, I'm not sure how much we'd really be getting done with the lockdown anyway. So it might be worth just taking another look at that.
Yep.
And is there a way, so we're looking at the savings and everything. I think, we would want to be pretty clear with all the departments that, if, like, let's say that this thing for, somehow stops the beginning of June, that we don't want the departments to go out and try to catch up on their spending in that last month, right? It's already all been allocated. They're authorized to spend. I think we probably need some kind of a process in there to make sure that we're not suddenly spending a lot in order to catch up if this ends before the end of the fiscal year. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the schools, when we met with them last night, the question was, would they be closed to the end of the year? That's been answered. So probably the two biggest departments in terms of fiscal 20 savings have one of the benefits of making the decision now is that we do have certainty around that. So from that standpoint, they'll be able to better plan between now and the end of June because they have certainty now.
Right.
How they're proceeding. So the other departments, obviously, depending on what happens, we'll just have to keep in mind.
Yeah, I think just a real clear message of, it's not because it was approved doesn't mean it's just okay to go ahead and spend it now. We really need to evaluate everything.
Yeah. And that message kind of has gone out, Nathan, that discretionary spending should be minimized.
Yeah, I think that the message has gone out. I'm wondering whether Nathan, and don't let me put words in your mouth, whether you're highlighting, message going out is one thing. Is there some form of process that is kind of put into place to ensure that's happening? But
That's
don't let me
exactly
put words
my
in your mouth.
point.
That's what I was listening.
That's exactly my point.
Yeah. So that's certainly, that's something, Tim, maybe you can take away and put some thought to, as coming out of this meeting. So I think if the last thing I think I just highlight here, and we talked a bit about that in the last discussion, which is really around, we had a few positions for next year, right? In terms of CONSCOM, the COA, and the Board of Health. And the Board of Health, I'll just remind folks, is that was actually net reduction to the budget in terms of the way that they framed it, as well as it managed some expenses in terms of grants that they get by ensuring that they have kind of a backup, for backup kind of in place. So I think the first two are the ones that we kind of have flagged up previously. I think you've further discussion on that in terms of a position from the standpoint of the board of, I don't know if the official position, but from the Board of Selectmen around FY21 kind of requests, or actually already approved increases in hours or FTEs.
Oh,
Victor, Lynn has her hand up. I'm not sure she's
Yeah.
having a hard time talking.
yeah.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, now we can.
Okay, hi. Yeah, I actually, just to dovetail off of what Victor is saying, I just wanted to make sure that we take a look at I know the last meeting, my understanding is based on talking to Board of Health, and Linda and Kathy are here, they can talk a little more to it, but we initially had those two positions melding into one, which was a cost savings. And so I want you to be aware that if we revert back to these two positions, the budget is going to go up. And on top of that, because we're not making this new position Linda's backup, we are going to lose some grants from the state. So there's a budget impact there that we need to be aware of. That could be somewhere and I'm just ballparking, I would rely on Priscilla to confirm with the benefit component, but it would be anywhere from about, I think we said between $6,000 and $8,000. So I want everybody to be very aware of that. And Kathy or Linda, if you want to speak a little bit to that, just to kind of give a little color in terms of what we discussed around the budget, going through this whole budget process. I don't know if they're still there.
Yeah, Linda's muted.
Oh.
Hello. Right. So I just want to emphasize how important having that second fully trained person in place. And if COVID has proven anything to us, it's that how desperately we need that fully trained backup person. And Kathy Galligan did a tremendous job in working the budget. So even allowing for benefits, because it would become a benefited position, there would be no net cost to the tax base. So I don't know if any of the other board members have something to say. Guess not.
As I will summarize, at the end, when we were closing our warrant and we were talking about the positions, I would say that the selectmen as a group were very supportive of that position and what was going to be accomplished with it, and the idea of succession planning and having the two deep, and it was achieving a number of things that we were hoping to achieve in terms of work, more efficient handling of work in the organization. So other selectmen can contradict me if they want, but that was my feeling of how we were feeling about that particular position. We were highly supportive of it.
I agree with that. It's a position that is needed, and if anything, this crisis has made it even clearer that we need that sort of support, and that if we just need the backup. That's too important a role to leave to chance. And if anything should happen to Linda, we would have been in really deep trouble, and we can't allow that to happen. We don't want anything to happen to Linda anyway.
All right,
Okay.
great. So those are all kind of the comments that I had made note of. I don't know from the Board of Selectmen, were there any other questions or feedback that you wanted to provide, or FinCom, anything that I missed in terms of the comments that I provided this evening?
I guess from the board, from my view on the Board of Selectmen, I just want to thank you guys for just getting right on this and, bringing it up and trying to figure out, what the impact is going to be. And I just really appreciate it.
Okay.
Yep. Great.
So I just want to say there is a gentleman in the audience who had been corresponding, and I know the Board of Selectmen have all received copies of the correspondence, and that was forwarded to us from Angela. I think this is the same person, but well.
Yes.
Yes. Would the board like to discuss that issue? Or
Can I make a statement?
beg your pardon?
Can I make a statement?
You can. I'm asking the board if they
Okay.
want to.
If the board has, if the board has my request, then I like the board to consider this. This is a very unprecedented time, and the financial woes are more for the senior citizens, because most of the senior citizens, they live from their savings. And as you know, the savings has gone down by 30 to 40%. And in order for us to sell our stocks, to pay the real estate tax, it will be a big burden for us. So I would appreciate if the selectmen consider this and delay payment of the tax by about 3 months. Thank you.
Thank you. I will just say that the board had considered at our last meeting whether we would delay the deadline for payment of taxes, and we decided against that. If people need to break their payments up into, break their taxes up into payments, for instance, and do it slower or things like that, they can certainly talk to the treasurer and work out a payment plan. But at this time, unless I see from my board that they're interested in reopening that question. Anybody?
I don't think, I guess I'm just wondering, just for clarification, because I don't believe that I was a part of a meeting where we discussed this. So I don't think it was the last one. What meeting did we discuss it in?
I think it was the Thursday one that you weren't there. It was the last Thursday, I believe.
Oh, not last week, but the weekend.
The week before. Yeah, the Thursday before last Tuesday. Whatever that would be.
But my request is only for the senior citizens, not for everybody.
You can't, as far as Mass General Law goes, it's to every taxpayer. You can't, in that sense, do one thing for a certain second. We can't do it case by case. If it's voted, it's for every taxpayer.
I'm not talking of case by case. I'm talking of the entire citizen community of Carlisle. And that's a different group.
If it's done and voted, it affects every taxpayer.
And the seniors are in very difficult situation. As I described, So I would appreciate the board to reconsider that again,
Well, it's not on our agenda for tonight, so we would not be able to discuss it tonight. We could put it on another agenda if the board wishes to.
I'd just like to tell the gentleman that also, we have created some different mechanisms in town that anyone is able to access, but in particular, senior citizens. And if you're not aware of those, perhaps we could supply that to you later, since.
Yes, I'm not aware of that. But I appreciate if Angela can have that.
Yeah, Angela would be able to
Yes.
advise you on that.
Yes.
Okay.
I guess what, from my perspective, I think what I'll do is I'll just look over what the discussion was, and maybe I can get back to you, Kate, on what my thoughts are.
Okay.
We should discuss it again.
All right. That would be probably the best way to handle it. And I'll give you a call tomorrow, or, I'll be happy to discuss it with you.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
I also think, though, this is something that we should be keeping close tabs on. And, Kim, if you're getting, or Priscilla, if you're getting, calls from individuals that are describing, hardship or inability to pay, I think we should try to keep a count on that, so we can look at that down the road.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I've had more inquiries just asking, but not maybe one other case that, maybe had more of a hardship, but not a lot right now. There is a roundtable tomorrow that I'm going to be at, and also one on Wednesday with the DOS. So they're going to discuss a lot around this and what might happen. There's a lot of repercussions with towns now that have extended it. And then with the revenues coming further out, then you're into revenue anticipation notes that are crossing fiscal years, and it affects your demand bill. But there are, the next few days, there's a lot of roundtables, webinars, all discussing, different outlets or different ways of things we can do. So I'll update you on anything new I hear.
Well, I would also like to know the state regulation which prohibits making the distinctions from the citizens and the rest of the public. If you have that, I would appreciate you if you would give that to Angela. I thought each town makes their own rule for senior citizens, and they make various breaks for the senior citizens, and Carlisle has not done anything. So if you could point me the state regulation which says that distinction cannot be made between senior citizens and the rest of the public, I would appreciate a copy of that to give to Angela. Please do that.
So I do want to point out that there are breaks for senior citizens in Carlisle, and on this maybe not spring warrant now, it might go to the fall warrant. There are additional that the town is considering, or the town will be asked to consider. Town meeting will be asked to consider. But there are currently some breaks. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Kim. There are certain things that for some senior citizens with regard to taxes.
Those are through the assessor's office, and those would be in the form of an exemption or an abatement. And that's through the assessor's office. So there's certain exemptions and abatements that are through the and the senior work off, and that's all through the assessor's office, not through the collectors.
Okay.
And I think increasing those exemptions are still on our warrant for this spring, Nathan. I can't remember though.
Yeah, they are.
And they would go into effect for the next fiscal year, but it is a process within so many days of receiving your tax bill, and it is all through the assessor's office.
Okay. I assume that in the meeting when this was discussed was kind of, Kim, did you go through kind of like any legal legal issues with it, or like, I don't think we can spend money we don't have, but like if we were to push this off, did we talk about what the impact of the town or what the legal implications of it would be?
There weren't really any full legal implications. What it was each town was given the option to either extend the due date to June 1st or to exempt interest through June 30th. And that could have included motor vehicle or anything. what happened after is some towns did, some towns didn't. Some felt it was not really a relief. It was just pushing the due date out. So if you push the due date to June or July, June 1st or June 29th, you then turn around on July 1 and have another bill that's going out, a preliminary tax bill and a demand bill. So it would have pushed all those other ones. So you would basically in 1 month be getting, or within that next month, getting all your bills on top. So it wasn't a relief of a percentage, it was, yes, a push out. What's happening now is they're answering questions is, if you pay it on June 30th, depending what day you push it back, you don't pay interest for 1 day. Your interest goes back to whatever due date the town had capped. So if it was May, it's 61 days. And if it was a June 1st, on June 30th, you're paying 31 days of interest. So it was a relief during a time period, but not a permanent type of relief. And now they're just looking into it because if towns are doing that, by law, you're supposed to send your demand bill out by the end of June. So they're talking about how that reflects on it. And we're waiting for answers from DOR on that. And then if you have a revenue anticipation note, a RAN, those are usually paid before the June 30th. So now there's other things that towns are, trying to figure out. And it pushed their revenue for big payments on July, off. So for us right now, we're keeping steady with what we have as I see. And again, on May 2nd or 3rd, whatever, May 1st is Friday. So on the Monday, I'll get everything together and see where we were at projected from 1 year to the other.
What interest rate, if somebody decides to defer it, what interest rate would you be paying? Right now, all the mortgage companies are charging like 3 to 4%.
The interest rate on taxes when they're delinquent are 14%.
Yeah, that's the rule many years back. Currently, the situation is changed. The whole world has changed.
They've talked about reviewing that, and it used to be way back like 4, 6%, 8% over other years. It was bumped up to 14% when, remember, the money markets and everything were paying, mortgages were 18% and money markets were 14%, and people were keeping their money in the bank, not paying their taxes, and only had to pay 6% on their interest.
I understand.
That bumped, and it hasn't reversed down, but that may be something that would be in legislation to be reviewed.
Yeah. Okay, so I did what I said I wasn't going to do, which is I jumped us into it. So I'll bring us back to, I'll watch the recording and then I'll chat with you, Kate.
Okay, I'd appreciate that. Okay, thank you very much. Anything else from the FinCom or any of those items?
Yep. Anything else to share from the FinCom committee in terms of items for this evening?
Great.
If not, we'll take a motion to adjourn our meeting and allow you to continue yours.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, and we'll have to do a roll call.
Trill, aye.
Petaccio, aye.
Dar, aye.
I heard Lynn say
Lipinski, aye. Yep, Lynn Lipinski, aye. Sorry about that.
And Liang, aye.
Great.
And Aaron dropped off.
And so, thank you very much. I do keep us in touch when you finally convene your little meeting with all the departments. I don't know if some of us would want to be there, or if you think that would be helpful for us, or if we should,
Yes.
or not. So that's great. And of course, we did talk last night about kind of the our deadlines in May for getting to the. Okay, great.
Victor, you had mentioned you had something you wanted to share that maybe was related to some of the numbers you gave at the beginning of your comments. I'm just wondering if that's something you could send to Tim and he could send out to the Board of Selectmen.
I can. The slides don't have numbers on them. I was going based upon memory from last night, but it has all the items listed, so I can send it along to him.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Here,
everyone.
Great. All right. If the Board of Selectmen could just take a minute or two, I hope you had some time to think about near, mid, and long-term considerations that we should be forwarding to the LEPC. Anybody have any thoughts?
Sorry, what agenda item are we on?
You know what? I don't have the agenda in front of me because it's the consideration of the LEPC's request for planning short, mid, and long term.
And it's, I mean, we just had the FinCom discussion. The next thing on the agenda is the town administrator's report, but we're we're putting this in between those. Is that correct?
Sorry, yeah, it really sort of grows out of this FinCom discussion too. And I would think some of our issues will be, growing out of that.
Well, I think short term, clearly the town meeting and elections have to be addressed. And still not clear how we're going to do that. We do have dates, but not a process. And so I think that's got to be high on our priorities in the next couple of weeks.
Were all of you on Wayne's list on his last couple of emails about he would like to come to us next week and set up a town meeting planning council, so to speak, planning advisory group.
Right.
I don't believe I was on that.
Chief Fisher, whom I see there, I can't remember who, BOA, Board of COA, and our board.
Yeah, came in late today, Nathan.
Yeah, came in late today. So
Yeah, I don't think I got it either, actually.
you didn't?
No.
Okay, so basically what he was
I
saying.
didn't get it. I just checked.
They're not, this planning advisory would not be planning, it would not be saying when, but how to do it. And we've given them the when so far. I would think that the only thing that would change our when would be if they came to us and said, there's just no way, we just don't know how to do it by then. Because in fact, now that unfortunately FinCom is gone, but that was part of the discussion last night also, was that we would really like to get a budget set before June 30th. They really are not happy, excuse me, would not be happy about this 1/12 business because they have big bills that come in 1st of July. Swallowed one, I'm sorry. And so it would throw things off if they had to do this 1/12 budget deal. So it really would be advantageous on for a number of things to get our town meeting done and our budget set. So that's why so we have the when, and if we can do the how, that would be great. The when, obviously, if we can't do the how, we'll have to change the when. But
that's one big item. And this maybe falls more in on Tim's list, but just the sort of reopening of town hall and, when that is feasible and then how that would happen. And then also along with that is just the various boards and committees getting back to a more regular schedule of meetings and work. And again, how that would be done.
Yeah, and that may revolve a lot around the availability of testing. And even if testing is available, how will we do it in a town like this where we don't really have a health facility? That's something that we'll have to address, because I think that's going to be very important.
Yeah. And the other sort of short term I had was, and again, maybe this, well, I'll just throw it out there, is just short term if we're thinking about the next couple of months, whether as a town we should be doing something to help families or individuals who have lost income in terms of the various federal and state programs that are available, which, you know, we haven't really, as far as I know, as a town, we've never really done that. But I'm just wondering if we need to look at either resources that exist in the region and how we can support individuals or direct individuals that way, or if there's something we need to be doing.
I saw on Laurie Trahan's website, she has set up a program for people to call in who have concerns about, at least about the federal programs that are available to people. And she's apparently got either folks who she can refer to or within her own office who can provide advice to people on how you do that.
You know, and with looks like another round of stimulus money is going to be passed fairly soon, and the loan program is going to get another infusion of cash. And I know a lot of folks missed out on the first round because the banks ran out of money. So anyway, looking at that, I think we should try to anticipate some of those needs, and if it's identifying resources and making sure people know how to access those resources, that we should be doing that.
By the way, I just checked those emails from Wayne, and you're right, neither Nathan nor Luke were copied on that. I'll forward those to you once our meeting's over.
Okay.
Yeah, we've actually gotten it. Yeah, a couple of people have sent it. So thank you to the folks that sent it. Yeah.
Oh, you've already gotten them. Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
No. It's all good. Thank you.
ID resources.
And I don't know if this is short term or more medium, but again, not ever having been in this situation before, these may be things that are in somebody else's bailiwick to think about. But I'm thinking about the summer and you know, what we're going to be, where we're going to be in terms of any kind of social gatherings and also youth programming. And I think it's something that, you know, needs some guidance from not just the LEPC, but, you know, from the Board of Selectmen in terms of how, say, the Recreation Department is going to approach that, and the Gleason Library and, you know, those other institutions that would be involved, or the sports programs.
I see Luke shaking his head. Okay. Yeah, I don't know if that's
still have
minute
it.
short
I still
either.
have that in that email. Would you mind forwarding it to me?
Okay.
Yeah, I can forward it to you, Nathan, in a minute. No, I was just going to say, it'll be interesting to see how the whole camp thing plays out this summer, right? Because if with schools just canceling, right, there's really, you know, I figured schools would be the ones to figure out an initial plan and as how to, you know, get kids back into a normal routine. So I think it's interesting, you know, because you have RecCom, for example, you know, while they're a professional camp, they're not, you know, they're not like a FEN or, you know, some of the other ones that are full-time professional camps. So I think we do have to strongly consider, you know, if we want RecCom to do that or see if they want to do that. You know, and I think ultimately we need to let people know as soon as possible. You know, obviously, you know, not tomorrow, but I think, you know, we got to get the sense of RecCom, if that's even something that they want to entertain this year. Just because, yeah, there's, you know, there may be an element of risk. I mean, you know, nobody knows when this is really going to end. And, you know, and, you know, hopefully by July, you know, one would hope, but yeah, you know, I think that's definitely a short-term concern. Yeah. And then even, you know, how are we going to ramp the schools back up in September? You know, I mean, I think they're, you know, just because we don't know it, right? And are they going to need additional funds? You know, is there going to be, you know, state guidance? Is it guidance that, you know, we're going to, you know, modify? I don't know. I just think there are a lot of huge question marks that, you know, these weekly meetings I think are good. because information literally changes daily. So yeah, I just, those are, and granted, it's because I have 2 kids in the system. I'm wondering how the hell I'm going to get back to work when I have 2 kids at home. So both my wife and I work. So it's like, I don't know. I mean, everybody will figure something out, but yeah, those are kind of the short-term things that I'm thinking about. And then also, yeah, as I think Barney mentioned, town hall, kind of implementing a plan to get town hall functioning again. Because I think the biggest thing here is, and I wanted to mention the FinCom with the Board of Health position too, is, like the succession plan, that's progress. We don't want to impede progress because of it, right? So we, even if we move forward slowly, at least we're moving forward. So, I just think, we have to be thoughtful and creative in some of the ways we do things. But I mean, people are going to want permits to do things. It's going to be the ideal time to start putting septics in, right? And I'm just using Board of Health as an example because they have I think by October, right, you can't put in a septic, right? So we don't want to have everybody trying to put septics in August and September. So I think we do have to try to get things back into place. You have people that can't get, refinance because they've got an outstanding thing with Conscom, or they can't get, they can't sell their house. So I think, there are a lot of things where people are being impacted where we don't necessarily think of it. So getting the town at least somewhat functional again, I think is important. And then, yeah, I think, as, what was his name? Basu. Yeah. As he pointed out, I mean, I think we've got to be creative in that respect too, with taxpayers who, I mean, you lose 25 or 30% in your stocks, right? And then to pay a 14% premium on top of that in interest, Jesus, that's huge. I think it'd be interesting to, and maybe folks can do this through Angela, just see what the interest in some sort of tax relief program is. And I don't know what we can do, but, if it's only a few citizens, then there's probably something we can do. If there's 50 citizens, that might be a little more tricky. But, there are people who are really being impacted by it right now. And I think we should focus on, seeing if there's some way to help. I mean, everybody's a Carlislean, so, try to make something work, I guess. But anyway, and long-term, Jesus, I don't know. I don't want to think.
Well, one of the longer-term things is as we head into the fall, we're going to have regular flu come back, and how we handle that in concert with coronavirus is going to be tricky. And that's nothing that we as Board of Selectmen are equipped to deal with, but certainly we have to look at where that planning needs to go and how we might respond to that, because that's liable to make things very messy.
Nathan, you have thoughts?
I guess I look even a little bit more shorter, and it's almost kind of a, well, what do we do if this goes even longer than we thought or than we had hoped? And so I guess for me, it gets back to making sure that our essential employees, that we have a plan for that. As I was saying earlier, I think that's the nearest term thing that we should do. And then I think taking a look at, you're trying to address some of the things that Luke was just bringing up, taking a look at the town employees. Are there things we can do to set them up better so that more of them can do their job remotely and not feel like they have to come into the office? Or maybe we could leverage them, differently, but not put them at risk, but try to get some of the services that we are providing that maybe we're not providing now. How can we do that? And also figure out a plan for what if there's a second bump, right? And I'm not trying to be a pessimist, but what if we open up, right? And there's a second bump and we have to close down again. What are we going to do then? And now is our opportunity, since we're learning. I think now's our opportunity to try to figure those things out. So how can we leverage our employees better than we are now? How can we ensure that if more employees are getting sick, that we can still provide the essential services that we need to? And what do we do if this goes on for a very long time, or it stops and then comes on again? For me, those are the most critical things that we should be looking at. And the impact of the budget, as we were just talking about.
Yeah. Well, some of that would, honestly, I think one of the things that we need to do is we have to digitize a lot of the records in town, especially for the septics or in the Board of Health, because one of the reasons they said they couldn't do the permitting is because they'd have to send somebody in to open the drawer and, rifle through the paper. So I think that's someplace we really would like to invest, if there are other functions that are impacted in the same way in other offices as well.
Yeah, I think that's kind of like a medium term thing, right?
But I think we need to start on it now, because to get to the median term, we have to do it now, because in the median, when we get to the median term, then, it's too late. Then we're going to have we'll be too late for the next bump.
Yeah, I guess I was just thinking, if town hall's closed, if people can't go there to look at the paper now, how do we get somebody to digitize it?
Because the person that's digitizing it would be the sole person there that would be digitizing it. Or maybe it all gets boxed up and sent to a company that does this. I don't know exactly.
Is town hall completely shut down, Tim? Is nobody going in there at all?
It's closed to the public, but there are employees that are working limited schedules, kind of alternating with other employees, and so that they're maintaining distance. It's closed as far as someone walking into town hall, but any resident should be able to get in touch with the department via email or via phone and get a response, in a timely fashion.
And so what are we doing to protect the employees who are still going into the office?
Well, we had a meeting this morning, and maybe the chief could speak to this, but we talked about putting protective equipment in town hall for those workers who are going to be coming in and working for any extended period of time.
Yeah, so he set up a table at the door. I'm sorry, he set up a table at the door with protective equipment. We also have had the town hall sanitized several times. But in general, people are careful not to come in. Pretty much any day you go there, there will be somebody in there working, but there will be one or two people in there working, and they'll be in different sections.
And I hit members who had specific needs and put stuff on their desks. But Chief Soros and I created that table with, I think, everything that needs to be taken care of. But I think in general, that's a great question, but in general, the folks that work in town hall have done a really nice job with social distancing themselves when they're working. And when I think about the work that Kim has done and the finance people with who's coming in when, who's doing what, so that there's not people there, and how they touch paper. They've got a really pretty solid plan, I think. I don't want to take any steam away from that, but so to answer your question, Nathan, I think that, we've done as much as we can for now, but your point's well taken, not to jump in the middle of something you guys are going to report on tomorrow.
Okay, I didn't realize that there were still people going in there.
I guess, yeah, I didn't really either. But I know that, still one of the reasons that some of them are not going in is because they don't want to touch the paper and then have somebody else go in the same cabinet. So digitizing some of the stuff would be certainly helpful.
Yeah, and I also think online permitting, applications. I mean, I think building department does it, but I think that's the only one.
They do. And honestly, I would love to put, John in charge of that, since he seems to know what he's doing and how to do it. And so it's totally doable. You could do all, and we should drag ourselves up into the 21st century here. And, maybe this is the impetus. And I think ultimately it'll be an investment up front, but I think ultimately it'll save us money down the line. And And if we ever have this kind of problem, we're set up, we're ready to work from home.
Exactly, yeah, because this stuff's already digitized, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it might be tough to read a plan that should be yay big when it's yay big. But it's a sacrifice you make, right? Or you blow it up on your computer, right?
Yeah.
So
I
yeah,
completely agree with this as a concept. I'm having a hard time figuring out how we do it while we're not able to go into the office. I mean, how do we manage something like that successfully?
As far as I understood, John took all of his stuff, he boxed it up, he sent it to a company, who digitized the whole thing. They kept the boxes and they keep them safe in a safe environment. And he gets a little, I don't know what he gets, whether he gets a memory stick or a CD or what, or maybe it's in the cloud. I think it's in the cloud. And that's it, it's done. Not only that, but it really frees up a lot of floor space in town hall.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be such a bad idea either.
And what is the cost of this?
I forget what he said, but he felt it was very reasonable. But and when he told me, I thought, wow, that's all? Really, it wasn't in the hundreds of thousands, I can tell you.
No, there was there was a CPA application for the stuff in the vault. I can go back and look and see what that was, just to give an idea. It was, historical town documents and that sort of thing. Because the vault was a train wreck, right? Now it's significantly better. But even too, just it's, the upfront piece too, though, is so, obviously you want to digitize all the stuff that's already there, but even just setting up the online permitting system for permits moving forward.
Yes.
I think that's something that can be set up remotely. But again, you'd have to hire a company to do it, or John. I think John did a lot of his own, but maybe,
No, he hired, because I asked him.
Oh, even to do that? Okay.
Yeah.
So, and the thing is too, if we are going to kind of meld all the funds, right? What did Kim say? He had 100 and some odd thousand in there. Maybe we use that bucket. We say, hey, John, I'm sure he'd be willing to.
It's perfect. It's building it, and it's not like it's out of context, so to speak.
Right.
It's building permits in general.
Right.
So
Right.
that money being spent for septic and even planning board, if they could, doesn't seem to me to be a appropriation of funds, so to speak.
No, exactly. I mean, one permit comes in and it can go to all the boards. Everybody can look at it. It applies to me. It doesn't.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah. The other thing too is, I received a comment is about, if there is going to be some sort of stimulus package, either a federal or a state stimulus package, just kind of preparing and having an idea of what we might want to apply for, or, what sort of projects we could do if there is going to be some sort of stimulus package. I don't know if there will be, odds are that there might be some sort of process. Carlisle always seems to be behind on the grant process. And it's like even the woman that came in the other day, and we were like one of two towns in all of Eastern Massachusetts.
Yeah.
Maybe we try to get a bit ahead of the curve. We keep our ear down to the ground on this and just listen, but also just have an idea of, what projects we're thinking about doing, and what we might be able to benefit from if a stimulus thing does come out, and what could we hop on?
I have a connection with the woman that works in Lori Trahan's office, and she sent me, some other things that I'd asked for. I'll give her a call and ask her to keep us informed and maybe pre-informed even about stimulus package.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, but you know what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I know. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So inform. Okay, I will call her.
Great. It's always good to know people.
Maybe we should be doing the same thing with Tammy Govey, Alan, in terms of
the state. Okay. I will call her. Yeah. Also. Okay, I'll call both of them. Good. Any other ideas? I like that idea, by the way. That's a great one, Luke, but looking for stimulus money. And you have to be on it because I'm on a board for a theater company, and one of their sponsors is a bank, and they worked with the bank before the PPP thing opened, and they were ready to roll the first day, and they got their money. They weren't too late, and it's because they had worked with the bank knew what they were doing. They were on time, and they got it all together beforehand, and so yeah, you have to be ahead of the curve, not behind the curve. Anything else? Otherwise, we can move to TA.
Well, we don't have to discuss it at length, but just the master plan and that whole process, and how I think maybe some guidance from the Board of Selectmen and FinCom about the next year or two, how that should affect or could affect the sort of proposals that come forward.
Yeah.
And that's a good, bigger conversation, but that is on my list. Because the steering committee is continuing to work, and we do have a contract with Civic Moxie, and we've already discussed the timetable extending, but still, we're well into a process of identifying priorities and best practices, and then beginning to look at, specific goals for Carlisle. So.
All right, Tim, could you make a note to put that on I don't think we want to do it at our next meeting. Maybe the meeting, in 3 weeks.
Yeah. May 12th. Yeah, we actually do have a few things for next Tuesday already. So that meeting,
Well, yeah.
would be kind of.
Next Tuesday is kind of our.
Yeah, Tuesday we're going to hear from the audit committee.
This is our COVID meeting.
Yeah, right. We've been trying to keep the official board business for the official meeting dates, and these in-between meetings are more, for the COVID discussions, and also kind of more open-ended financial discussions with FinCom and others. So we have a more formal meeting next Tuesday.
Okay. What else do we have on that agenda, Tim, in addition to the
report from the audit committee on the FY19 audit, the public safety communications working group will be coming to make a recommendation regarding the proposed Banner Davis RFP. And the moderator, as Kate mentioned, is also coming in to request to set up that town meeting advisory committee. So those are three things. Also, we actually have the documentation to set up an OPEB trust that we'll be asking the board to approve. So at long last, the trust will officially be approved, and that will result in a different discount rate going forward. And then there's also, I think, a request from DCR. They want to acquire a conservation restriction on, I think it's the Erickson property, if I'm not mistaken. Kate, you'll remember getting this.
Yes, it's kind of like, it's a little piece inside of the state park.
Yeah, 12 acres.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And the state needs the board to take certain actions so that they can kind of speed that transaction along. There's a statutory period that the board can waive. I don't know if I think it's 90 or 120 days. That if the board has no objection to the state moving forward, you can waive that period. But we'll have that for you on the agenda as well.
Chief Fisher, if they haven't opened up that other parking lot, maybe we have to mention that as
Right.
From their
Leverage.
waiver if they give us their parking lot.
Yeah,
It's already open.
It's open.
both of them are? Good,
All of them are. They
Good.
opened all of them
Good.
for us.
Okay,
good.
all right.
Are we discussing complete streets tonight, or is that also coming up at another, on another agenda?
I think on the following agenda, you'll be talking more about what's still on the warrant and what, well, you took a vote last time on certain articles to take off the warrant, but over the next few meetings, regular meetings, you'll be, formalizing the warrant for the June 23rd meeting, which will probably be shorter than was anticipated. It's interesting that we looked at it from, what non-financial articles can we move to the fall? And the Finance Committee tonight was talking about deferring financial articles to the fall. So it's getting shorter and shorter, I think, as we look at it. I know that they actually, I thought they might bring it up tonight. They did discuss complete streets to some extent last night. But
I would very much like to postpone talking about it because it's not on the agenda.
Right, no, it's.
No, I was asking when we're gonna, sorry if it made it sound like it was tonight, but, so is it on an agenda in the future?
It will be on an agenda when we discuss the warrant.
Yes.
Okay, but that's not next Tuesday.
Not the 28th. It'll probably be on the May 12th warrant
Okay.
agenda.
Okay. Town administrators report.
Yeah, but that was a long way around saying that I don't have a report for you. But,
Okay, and did I have liaison? I'm sorry, I don't have the agenda in front of me because
You do have liaison report
today, and I'm on this little on a little book, MacBook, and so I don't have the screen, that split screen that I usually have. So okay.
I have a quick thing on the liaison report. So the Deer Control Committee had a Zoom meeting, what is it, Tuesday, last Wednesday, I guess. And are proceeding with, developing plans for a fall deer hunt. And I know, they came to the board several weeks ago and got some feedback from the board and have been making some, adjustments to their plans. And I think at some point in the not too distant future, they would like to come before the board to sort of review where they are and before they hold a public hearing, which obviously we'd have to do via Zoom, but on the proposals for a fall hunt, assuming we're going to go ahead with that. So just, I guess, Tim and Kate, you should let me know or let Jonathan DeCock know when would be a good time to be on the Board of Selectmen agenda.
Okay, so they're all ready to rock and roll?
Well, they would be. I mean, they wouldn't be for this next Tuesday, but any time after that, they would be able to.
There was a resident that wanted to be notified when it was next on the agenda. I forget the gentleman's name, but I'll make sure he's invited, to the meeting that's scheduled for.
Okay. Anything else from anybody else? Then I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
You are right on time, too.